Hey, everybody, welcome to the No Prescription Needed podcast. Today, I am with the accidental pharmacist. A lot of times when I do these, I usually have to give an intro, but I feel like this guy kind of needs no intro. With I think you have about 76,000 followers. I have
Something
about
like that.
five. I have about 5,000, so I'm only like 71,000 to go.
Shit, it's way harder to get YouTube followers though. So you got it out that. And hey, man, you're all over the internet right now. I can't open a pharmacy page. I can't go on. And even those ones that I don't use, like Liker and Reddit and all that shit. Like my wife keeps telling me, you got to do TikTok. You got to do, you need to get more wham doodles on the whatever freaking platform it is. So, but you're all over the place since the news broke on the Walgreens front.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I was at work the other day and I was in drive-through and just a random customer like, "Were you on that video with Z Dog MD?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, if it's even reached the customers, this is crazy." And it's just kind of been kind of interesting. It's kind of hard because I get so many emails, and as somebody, you don't want to seem
Yeah.
like that person that's just, oh, he doesn't respond or he doesn't care. Like I try to, but people like send you 10-page essays about, well, in
Yeah.
1999 this happened, and in 2001, and then in
Yeah.
2008. You're like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah. So
Yeah. Same thing. I really try to respond to every single person that sends anything as far as direct messages to the page or emails or anything like that. But as the page grows, you almost like you have that stock. Thanks for sending. We'll definitely repost for you, because one of the things that we do on the page is allow people to ask questions anonymously or put things up. And I almost have like this little stock thing. Like, you want to be genuine, and a lot of times I will spend a few seconds to respond to anybody who sends anything in. But it's becomes overwhelming at a certain point that you really want to show everybody that you care and it's really you, but it can be hard to respond to everybody. So I understand that. And you're blowing up, man.
yeah, I'm trying to just get the word out about these terrible working conditions and see what I can do for the profession. So it's kind of been a whirlwind, but I guess this is, when you put yourself out for, this is what you ask for. So when it comes, you just have to be ready
Yeah, you
for
got
it.
to be ready for it. And I think that it's great that we hooked up long before any of this stuff went down with Walgreens, and I always saw your stuff, and I was always a fan on the page. And that's why I always thought, like, God, this guy's got so much content on YouTube. How is he not getting the followers yet? It's just because all of a sudden it's like one thing has to happen, and then you're blows up. I was doing this for about a year, and then one time the cynical pharmacist reposted something, and then the next day you look at your stuff and a couple thousand more, and it just feeds on itself.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I was talking to a another friend of mine, and I was talking to him about your page, and he's like, "Why do they call him the accidental pharmacist?" And I was like, "You know what? I don't even know. Let me ask him." So I wanted to ask you, well, how did you come about with that name?
Yeah, I put this up a couple times because I do get that question a lot, and they're like, "Oh, the accidental pharmacist, you must make a lot of mistakes or something." I'm like, "No, that's not what." Yeah, the accident. Whoops, sorry, wrong drug. No, it was more. Um, I don't think a lot of people come into this profession dreaming of being a pharmacist as a young child. I mean, have you ever heard that story of like, all my life I wanted to be a pharmacist and give people drugs legally? That's not usually the way it works. I was one of those guys that had a great time in grade school and middle school and high school. I loved the idea of high school. I played a lot of sports, did those kind of things, but didn't really focus on education as much as I probably should have. I did do decent because maybe I had a little bit of natural ability for mathematics and things like that, but never really spent a whole lot of time. Had a lot of fun, uh, but not really focused on that. So I was kind of lost, and both my parents didn't go to college. My stepfather was a prison guard. My mom was a nurse's aide. So not really from a background of you got to go to college, you get this career. So I got a partial wrestling scholarship to go to Wilkes University, where I ended up graduating from out of high school, and I wanted to be an English major. The idea was I was going to teach English in high school and be like a wrestling coach and a track coach and those kind of things. But I wasn't. I love literature and I love that uh, area of study, but never really cared too much about it. Got in a fight with my parents 2 weeks out of high school. Joined the Navy. You know, like, I'll show them, I'll join the Navy. So yeah, I joined the Navy, and most people in the military, you know, you got a job, a steady job, because you can't leave, you know, you can't quit. And you think you're grown up, but you're really not. You know, you're still 18 years old and have no idea what you're doing. But of course, you get married. You know, most time you get married. So I immediately got married, immediately had a child, and found out I'm not really a grown up yet. You know, so I had that trial marriage. It was like maybe a little over a year, and I had my son. And through a series of events, I ended up getting custody of him when he was 14 months old, and was getting out of the military. And I'm like, shit, I got to get a job. You know, I got to have a life. Like, I was so nervous. And I started college, the community college in my hometown. And one of my first classes, I ran into a guy whose brother was in the pharmacy program at Wilkes University. And I'm like, okay, you know, that's the first time I'd ever heard of. Oh shit. Are you still there?
I'm still here.
Oh yeah. Someone's trying to call me on my phone. Yeah, it's the first time I ever heard of pharmacy as being something that you went to school for that long. And so, yeah, I'm like, all right, I'll do that. So it just sort of fell into pharmacy because of that. So we became roommates, and went to pharmacy school. I really, really loved the profession after 12 years of being a licensed pharmacist in California, but it all sort of happened by accident. And that's what I'd say. Like, I feel like never really wanting to do this. My life has turned out pretty awesome, you know, because of it. So that's why I say the accidental pharmacist.
That's funny. It was kind of similar. My whole life, I wanted to be a vet. And it wasn't until like my dad was like, well, you should be a pharmacist. And he was big on, people aren't going to spend a ton of money to save their animals. You could make more money being a pharmacist. So I kind of let my dad persuade me from being a vet, and from being a veterinarian, which sometimes when the customers yell at you, I was like, God, I should have went to vet school. These dogs don't.
I wish you were a dog right now.
Yeah.
Put that cone. I put that cone on you.
No, I want to put that shock collar on them. Tell them to be quiet. But it's like, yeah, I never thought I was gonna be a pharmacist. Really, I wanted to be a vet, but I let my dad kind of talk me out of that. But that was
don't be blaming Dad, Maurice. You know, throwing Dad under the bus.
Yeah, no, I have no regrets, from pharmacy. At least when I first started, I loved it. Highly involved in APHA, did a residency. I've had some experiences over a lifetime that I think if I went to vet school, I wouldn't have had. Going to conferences and meetings and poster presentations.
Yeah. The thing the feedback that I keep getting from everybody about who's watched your initial video about getting fired from Walgreens is like, man, this guy has done so much for his community. Like, how could anybody say, regardless of, like, they don't know how you worked in the pharmacy, but to have that much passion and to put that many things outside of, the normal, just behind the bench, you obviously have such a passion for the profession. That alone that's why so many people are outraged, because you hear that someone gets fired and you're like, oh, that sucks, especially when it's around social media. And a lot of people take that hardline approach that, oh, this company has a social media policy for a reason. But when you see those kind of things and all the positivity that you are putting out into the community, that's why I think it really resonated with so many people, and really people were really angry. I mean, really, really angry about it. For Z-Dog to be like, fuck Walgreens, you obviously struck a nerve with somebody.
I was like, oh, he's mad. And, just even for me, I guess I get social media, but like when they let you do it for 7 years and they've actually supported and came out to shows, and, it's not like my material has really changed to just have one person be like, oh, it's gross misconduct, you're gone. I was like, and especially when to not give you a warning, hey,
you have to upset the wrong person. You have to upset the wrong person. And it seems like that's the way it happened. Because the same thing when I was with CVS, it's like I had on the Target side, the Target pharmacy supervisor and the Target managers on my page, like pictures of us together on the page, and, followers that were in my direct chain of command, who obviously knew about the page from its infancy, from the time I started it, and still couldn't really say, like, look, everybody knew about this. Why all of a sudden is this a problem?
Yeah.
So that can happen. So don't think that just because you think that one of your managers or anything knows about that. I've had people reach out to me before and say, "Hey, I want to do what you do on the internet." Especially there's one kid who was in pharmacy school, like getting ready to graduate. He's like, "I'd like, to replicate kind of what you're doing and be on the internet and, you know, maybe do some of those things outside." And I said, "You really got to watch, at least put that out in the very beginning and get something in writing that someone knows about it in your direct chain of command, because they can always come back and say, 'Hey, this is our social media policy and you violated it.'"
Yeah. Sad times we live in. Well, I'm glad there's people like me and you, and there's other people who are working to try to improve the profession. Me and you kind of speak out in the open, but there's so many like pharmacists who are working behind the scenes, but are like so scared. And they're like, "Oh, I go by
Yeah.
this secret Twitter handle," or they'll message me on a page and they'll have like this crazy, like just random like picture, like a Renaissance picture, like, "Hey, I'm working behind the scenes. I couldn't like your post because I don't want to get fired." And I was like, I can't believe so
Yeah.
many people live in fear. Like I've never lived in fear. I was like, okay,
That's
well, I was shocked how many people
I get the
actually live
same
in
thing a lot.
fear and want to speak out. So that's why I've been trying to give my platform to other people. And you might have saw my one video that I did with the veteran who said that the military, like Walgreens, was more stressful than the military. I know that you said you did some time in the army. Can you speak to that in terms of retail being as stressful as the army? Or
Well, I was in the Navy actually, but yeah,
okay.
it's definitely night and day. I mean, there are stressful components in being in the Navy, but I would say that they're absolutely correct. From in a retail setting, the one positive thing about being in the military is from the very beginning, you get every holiday off, every national holiday off, 30 days paid vacation a year. Shit, you got to work at Walgreens for like 5 decades to get 30 days vacation a year.
You get
And even when
bathroom
you try and
breaks.
take a vacation, you got to plan it. Yeah, you get to piss, and it's awesome. Like you know, and
Oh,
there's a lot of downtime in the Navy. Like so yeah, in the Navy you get sort of like treated like a human being sometimes, and in retail they don't care. I said in my video that we did last week about how I'm having some issues with the coronavirus at my store, and I'm down to one delivery driver from normally 4 delivery drivers, and I'm getting patients on the phone like, "I don't give a fuck what's going," like just losing their mind and really give zero consideration that, like, "Oh, I'm here by myself with normally 11 people or 10 people and now I have 4." They don't want to hear that. They want to know where their drugs are. And it's part of the business, and you have to do it with a smile, and you have to understand that patients they're not always that angry, but when it comes to medications, I get it. They should have taken some personal responsibility, but it's their health and they're always concerned about it. So
I always get more appreciation and thanks as a comedian than
yeah,
I do a
it's
pharmacist.
difficult.
I think it should be the other way around.
Yeah.
When I'm on stage, I'm not saving anybody's life. I'm just making them laugh for 45 minutes. But so many people reach out to me and say, "Thank you. We love what you do." And then when you're a pharmacist, like checking drug interactions, going above and beyond to get something covered, and they don't even say thank you at all. It's backwards.
Yeah, but you rationalize it because you are helping people and you're making a difference in their life, even if they don't appreciate it. But the thing is that when these companies now don't start appreciating it, that's what really bothers me, is because I expect it from patients sometimes that I'm not going to get everybody who's really going to care, but I expect the companies to care. And that's why the union thing is so big for me. And I really feel like you're trying to convince people in pharmacy, you're trying to convince technicians and pharmacists that this is important and this is something we should put our time into, we should invest our money in. I'm surprised we have to convince as many as we do. But there's still some out there who think that, it's not worth it, or they're afraid. Just like you said, they're working behind the scenes. I've had people reach out to me and say, "I want to donate to the GoFundMe page for the union, but I'm concerned that my employer is going to come back and there's going to be repercussions for it." So that's crazy to me, but they're that afraid of losing their job, even if their job sucks, that they're, not willing to donate $10 because they're worried of losing it.
Yeah, that was a perfect transition. Going from the terrible working conditions to the pharmacy to talking about this national union. So, what made you think of this, or how did this come about? You trying to raise money, a GoFundMe for a national pharmacy and pharmacy technician union.
The main impetus behind it was, we've been doing the accidental pharmacist started 5 years ago in June. 5 years ago, I couldn't believe it when I saw that, but like the page has been started 5 years ago, and ever since the beginning, even more so now, is with every new issue that comes along, people send me messages, and all of it is, how terrible the working conditions are, how they feel like underappreciated. And at least in the beginning, 5 years ago, my wife used to get bonuses every year. Those bonuses have gone away at Walgreens. Those extra little things that they did to make you feel like you were important. And for you to feel it in California, where there's some labor laws that aren't even applicable in most states, for people out here to feel it, it's got to be really bad across the country. And I just felt like I can't see these stories anymore of all these people that are working so hard and still having, these problems, and they're only going to get worse. This relentless pursuit of profits by these companies on the backs of pharmacists, they're really being exploited. Technicians are being exploited, pharmacists are being exploited. And if we don't do something to, stop the bleeding here, it's only going to get worse. And there's only so much words can do. I mean, it's good that we're putting those things out there, but until we try to make some kind of change, until we try to put those words into action, we're just, bullshitting on the internet and complaining.
Yeah, I know that some people will give their opinions of why they don't like unions, like they don't want to have to strike just because everybody else is striking or whatever reasons they give. But I feel like the profession is at such an all-time low. Like you need something, even if you don't
Yeah.
fully agree with unions, it's just that bad that something needs to be done. And I was kind of curious as to, I know it says National Pharmacy Union, but do you plan to try to start a national one? Are you going to start off locally in California, or how do you plan to roll out the union? Because I know, like when I was in Chicago, if you worked in Chicago, you had a union, but outside of Chicago, there was no union.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that the big dream, and if we had enough funds and enough backing, would be to start our own union from scratch. I was thinking Pharmacy Workers of America, PWA. I'm not sure if that's an available title or not, but that would be ideal, because some of the people that I've been in contact with, there was actually one police officer who was a union police officer for 30 years. He's just getting ready to retire. And he talked about what works in unions and what doesn't. And he talked about a really great union in Flint, Michigan, a police officers union in Flint, Michigan. And the reason why it works so well is that it's basically the police officers and a labor attorney. And they do the direct bargaining. There's no outside entities. There's not political interest. There's not anything. And they do a great job because they are so vested in it. And I just thought, like, if we could replicate that model locally, if it had to be in the beginning, and roll that out where there's not those already established unions that have these ties or other obligations, or are bleeding money, that it could be just union, the people that are involved in the union, those dues going directly to lobbying, going directly to bargaining on behalf of the pharmacists, and really not bleeding money to all these other entities. That would be the ideal thing, but I know it's very difficult to it's a lofty goal, to say the least, to want to roll it out across the country, especially because of the things you said. Like, so many people are like against it because they feel that their political beliefs don't align with it, or things like that. But I wanted it to be an apolitical organization. I didn't want us to say, you have to vote this way if you're in our union, you have to vote that way, or have those political ties. That from the very beginning, this is about changing the profession for the better. This is about making sure that our working conditions improve, and that we have contracts that allow us to be compensated for the work that we're doing. That's all we're focused on. We're not concerned about your political affiliations or anything else aside from what you do behind the bench and how you're compensated for that work.
Yeah, my experience with the union, I remember one specific case. I used to work at a 24-hour store, so there was me and another overnight pharmacist who had been there for a while. And what he would do on his weeks off, or even the weeks that he worked, we had a lot of Medicaid, and they required a lot of prior off for prescription limits, things like that. And what he would do is when he would go home, he would actually call um, and start the prior auths and check
Oh
up
my
on
gosh.
them. And the pharmacy manager, she knew about it, but she had no problems with it because the next day around 11 o'clock, she would just rerun them. And it was like the first busiest store I've ever seen that had probably had like 3 TPRs because he was
Hmm.
doing this just because he loved the pharmacy. He loved compounding
Yeah. Yeah.
pharmacists. And yeah, patient information shouldn't have left the pharmacy, but he always said, I brought it back, I threw it away. It was only for that. Well, somehow they got in a disagreement about a Stars event. A mistake was made, and they went back and forth. So then she reported him, and he was like, "Well, she let me do it for so long, and she's only reported me now because she's mad." And the union actually got his
Yeah.
job back, so he couldn't work at that store, but he got to work at another store. And so I kind of saw the
Yeah.
power because I was like, "Oh man, this guy's been working for the company for so long. He just got fired. All he was trying to do was help." And they got his job back within 3 weeks because I called another store and it was him. I said, "What's up, buddy? I thought you got fired." He's like, "Yeah, the union got my job back." So I definitely, when I hear so many people saying that, "Oh, well, I got fired. They told me it was because of these mistakes I made 6 months ago, but it was probably because their salary." They'll just come up with anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's where the union really comes in because, people all of a sudden, when they don't want you, all of a sudden they're trying to fire you for these metrics that never
Yeah.
cared before. And so that's where I really see
If
why a union is.
they
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head, is that because the market is so saturated right now, there are people that are on the chopping block, and if they want to find a reason to fire you, they will. And replace you with someone who will do your job, and do it for less money, and do it without making any noise about it. Especially if you're an older pharmacist and you expect things a certain way, or you understand what is required of you and what is not required of you. They don't want that. They want a yes man in there. They want someone who's happy to make whatever they're making, who's happy to get their hours, and doesn't demand to be treated a certain way because they've been there a while. And that's the power of a union and the power of collective bargaining and the power of organization, is that one pharmacist, they can handle losing. They talk about, I don't want to strike because everyone else is striking. They see that because of other organizations, other business models where they have unions, and a strike they might be able to handle that. But if all pharmacists were even threatening to strike, for say all Walgreens pharmacists were threatening to strike tomorrow, Walgreens someone from corporate would be like, we need to get somebody on the phone who's organizing this and talk this out, because we can't have all our stores closed tomorrow. The fallout from that, just from patients, the media attention that would draw, it's a different thing if all retail pharmacies for any chain were doing that. So if we had a national organization with that kind of pull, we would be able to demand some things that we wouldn't even dream of saying now, or dream of doing. Just something. I mean, the fact that there's been no raises for at least this district in California for Walgreens for the last 3 years, even in the face of the pandemic, they're not doing anything extra for pharmacists out here who are really and technicians who are risking their health.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just kind of crazy too, because a lot of people they had commented like, "Oh, I think maybe it was your salary," but I was thinking, I hadn't been a pharmacist that long. When I first started with Walgreens, I was always getting promoted to a different store. Hey, can you manage this store? You fix it.
Yeah.
Hey, can you fix this store? But the problem is, when it was time for my evaluations, the managers would say, "Well, we loved you. You fixed the store, but you've only been here a few months, so I can't really give you
Yeah.
a great review, even though I fixed the store." So I never got, raises. My score wasn't high enough really to
Yeah.
just get those. And then they just stopped giving them. So my salary doesn't even compare to
Yeah.
like, pharmacists that have been working for a while kept getting raises. I was probably like on the low end, 58 an hour, 60. So I think it's important to start a union, but I think maybe if we can, on this podcast, kind of get rid of some of the fears, more people would be willing to help. So the salary. Now, if people were to strike, that's why I was big on starting my own business. I actually had started too before Corona hit. Things didn't quite work out, but I'm still working on that. But I always told myself, man, if I'm still in the profession of pharmacy, I want to be able to strike and not have all of my finances tied up in Walgreens. So if I'm not working, I'm still getting income from the school or the barbershop that I had. So is there a way that unions can help people when they strike, if it goes a long time or?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what a union is really designed to do. If you, like we talked about the streamlining in the beginning, if you don't have lots of people in the structure for the union, you basically have, maybe a union president, just very little employees or very people that are draining funds from the union's dues. And you just are essentially paying an attorney, just a handful of people to do the contracts and things like that. You build up those cash reserves so that in a case of a strike, the worst case scenario, that we can start helping people that belong to the organization. And that's really one of the other things, is just being able to do those things. I think if it becomes part of the culture for pharmacists and technicians, there's a great thing that we can do that I don't think any pharmacy schools really focus on right now. When you come out of pharmacy school, you are going from an intern who makes $12 an hour, or $13 an hour, to a pharmacist whose starting rates, even though they're dropping precipitously recently, you were staring down, six-figure salary from someone who was probably surviving on, poverty wages or close to poverty wages for the amount of hours you were putting in. Pharmacy schools don't do a very good job of teaching anything related to personal finance. And I think that should be part of it. I mean, you're doing a disservice to educated professionals who all of a sudden are making all this money and they don't know what they should be doing with it from the very beginning. They don't understand about investing. They don't understand the importance of having a 401k. They don't understand creating that budget in the very beginning. I'm telling you because I didn't know. I don't come from a background. My parents didn't have money. I didn't come from a background of how to buy a house, how to do those things. So if we had a union that even one day online class about, you're a brand new pharmacist, you're coming to join our union, this is like an orientation day about what you should expect as a new technician, as a new pharmacist. These are the things you can do to set yourself up for success in the future. I think that would be a great thing, because I wish I had someone in my life when I graduated from pharmacy school at 29 and said, hey, maybe don't go out and buy an Audi today. Don't go out and blow your bonus that you got back when you used to get bonuses for signing contracts with companies like Walgreens. And, this might look like a lot of money to you because you're not used to it, but it's really not. And these are the things you could do to set yourself up for long-term success.
I notice when people, they talk about unions and they don't want to strike, but a strike is really a union's last option, right? Because if that
Correct.
doesn't work, then you have no other chips. You just put all your cards on the table. So a union really tries every other option possible, which I think is perfect, because you have somebody that's speaking and working and really trying to work with these retail companies to get things changed. I think that's kind of a misconception people have. They just think of strikes, but unions do, that's just their last option. I don't think they prefer to strike, because if that doesn't work, then you just used all your cards in your deck.
Imagine if we had an eloquent president of the Pharmacy Workers of America being able to go to a media outlet and getting some press time, some face time with the press, saying, look, we don't want to close all the pharmacies tomorrow. We want these $1 trillion, $1 billion companies to be able to give us a contract that says that technicians get 50-cent raises a year or pharmacists get $1 raise a year? Do you want a huge disruption in the healthcare system over, 25 cents an hour raises built into our salaries or something, or giving us time off or adequate healthcare benefits? These are things that if you had the right person to be able to do that, to be the face, we would never get to that point, because the public would not, the public outcry would be like, these are healthcare professionals fighting for, all they see is they think every single person that's in healthcare is rich, and every single person in healthcare has these great jobs and great salaries and great working conditions. But if you had someone to be able to shine a light on the fact that, it's a very difficult job, that you're oftentimes doing everything you can for patients and some things are out of your control. And the fact that these companies that are making tons of profit, giving, great dividends to their shareholders, but can't take care of their employees who are out there making the money for them, I think that we would never have to strike, because it would never come to that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'd be on there telling them, we don't even get to pee. We can't even eat. People are having nervous breakdowns, curled up in the fetal position till they can find your replacement. And I think I from my experience doing stand-up comedy, when I tell people, that's just what the fans say, like, oh, I didn't realize retail was that bad. I didn't realize you guys do so much. I just think the public just doesn't know, because I think most people love their pharmacists. They do like coming to the pharmacy, because I see some people get a prescription every day. I'm like, are you here again? And I think they really do like their pharmacists. And if they saw that their pharmacist was being mistreated like that, for the most part, there would be more of an outcry. But I also want to ask, what do you think is the biggest, besides money, what would be the biggest hurdle to actually getting a national union?
Aside from the money, the first thing we talked about is changing the perception, is getting enough people. There are a lot, I could tell just by how many individual donors we've had to the GoFundMe thing, that there are lots of interest, and there are a lot of people that understand we need it. But changing all that, those beliefs that some people have strongly held against unions, and understanding the benefits. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing, is not just the money, but getting so many people that are passionately behind it to roll it out on a national organization or national level. We'd need leaders in every state. We'd need to organize, which is hard, but hey, there's platforms like mine and yours, the XL Pharmacist page and your page and your YouTube, where we can come together and we can have, I thought what you said about having those Zoom meetings where even if people don't want to have their face out there, that they can come and talk about that. And the more people are aware of the stories that are going on, say, hey, I'm experiencing the same thing in this state. I've had people reach out to me already, say, hey, I want to be in charge of New Hampshire. I want to be in charge in Louisiana. I've had people say that I'm here. What can I do to help? Even if they don't have, financially can't help right now, they want to be there. They want to help spread the word. And we're going to need lots of people in lots of areas of the country behind this. And that's the first thing, so that we can really get that word out, this is not just two guys talking on the internet, that this is the beginning of a change for the profession and the future, and really trying to preserve what we have and forwarding it on every front. All the other things that you're concerned about. If we had a national organization for pharmacists and technicians, how much more could we do on the PBM front? On all of those things concerning pharmacy, that doesn't necessarily seem like, oh, a union would be the way to fix this. A great union would be the way to fix a lot of things wrong with pharmacy.
I think that one other benefit I do see with the union is that a lot of people, when I ask them why aren't they more involved in their state pharmacy associations, or why don't more people go to their board of pharmacy, some of the comments I got was like, well, the board of pharmacy and the state associations, they're just infiltrated by people who work for CVS and Walgreens, and they really don't, they're really, just there to just listen to see who's complaining, then they'll be attacked, and they just don't have a trust with the associations or contacting their state board. So that's why I think a union would be great, because you wouldn't have to necessarily worry about that issue. And the union,
and you could have some weight. You could even get you could get some union representatives sitting on the boards of pharmacy and really help, preventing a lot of that from happening. So that's the thing is as soon as you got some weight behind you, you could probably get someone elected, and you could probably get someone on the boards of national organizations, and that would just further the profession for good.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I said, the profession is either hit rock bottom or it's getting there. And I think that this union is something great. So I think I have about 12,000.
I would rather have a union than an increase in alcoholism and drug use and everything else among pharmacists and technicians. I don't want to see a increase in substance abuse. I'd rather see an increase in a union.
It's
stuff.
funny that you talked about that. We're about to talk about substance abuse in the pharmacy, but before I go there, I'm going to let you know that I will have a link to the GoFundMe in the description section of this. You can definitely find the link. I see it almost every day. It pops up on my page on the Accidental Pharmacist page, and I'll actually post it on my page as well a little bit more frequently. So if you want to donate to that, please do. Feel free to reach out to the Accidental Pharmacist if you have more questions about it.
Yes, and we
go ahead.
To give you an update on that, there's $6,700. I think that last check is the amount that's been raised thus far. Many individual donors, some people have given as little as $5. So anything you could do really helps. And I will keep posting. I'll keep mentioning about it. And yes, reach out to either one of us if you have any questions about it or what you can do. And I want to see people say, yeah, more of that. I want to, start a chapter in New Mexico, or I want to be there when you guys start organizing at whatever state or whatever city that you're in. So yeah, let us know for sure.
Definitely. I'm glad that you brought up substance abuse. Somebody on my page, I talked a lot about depression and mental health with the pharmacy, and as well as pharmacy school. And someone asked me if I could talk about substance abuse.
Yeah, I just wanted to get ready because we're talking about substance abuse here. So I've got a 40 of Corona. I don't actually really drink. It's just a prop. I thought it would be kind of funny to.
A Corona prop during these times.
yeah, I got a Corona prop here. Let me taste it. I don't know. I don't even know what this tastes like. It's gross. It's gross.
I thought they banned Coronas.
Yeah, they did have one. The lady, they were shooting in the middle of the day, but it was like 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, that'd be kind of funny if as soon as we started talking about substance abuse, I pulled that out. And the lady's looking at me like, really? It's 8:30 in the morning. You're getting a Corona? How you doing, sir? He must have a rough.
I remember when I used to work these overnight pharmacies for Walgreens in Chicago. People would be calling all night, because we stopped selling liquor at 12 o'clock. What time do you sell liquor again? I'm like, this is all not till 8 o'clock. It's 4:30. They call again at 6:30. You selling liquor yet? I'm like, I told you 2 hours ago we don't sell liquor at 8 o'clock. They should be standing outside waiting till we sell.
I've had people come through the drive-through in the middle of the night when I still worked for. The last time I worked in overnight was when I still worked with Walgreens. I did that at the 24-hour store. They'd have people come through the drive-thru and be like, "Can I get liquor through the drive-thru?" And I'm like, "No, you can't. You can't get any liquor through the drive-thru. Sorry."
I'm surprised during these times with Corona they don't allow that the way these companies want money. But it made me think, because I remember when I first started working after work early in my career where understaffing wasn't as big. When I came home, I might have been tired, but I was never like, oh, let me have a drink. And as the years went on, like 2-3 years, like it kind of got more stressful. So then I never been a beer person, so I'd have a glass of wine. And then a year later, that went from a glass of wine to like a cranberry vodka. And then I'd come home and just have like Crown on the rocks. And I swear my last year, I was drinking just moonshine. Like they had this fruit punch moonshine, and it had gotten all the way up to moonshine, which is kind of funny, but it's kind of sad. Like I didn't have a substance abuse problem, but I could see, to bring my anxiety level down, I was having to go to stronger and stronger versions of alcohol. And even like as a manager, you wake up, like I didn't have to be at work till 12, and you wake up at 8 o'clock, and it's like, so-and-so called off, and so-and-so called off. Can you come in early? We're already 100 scripts. And you have that anxiety, that pit in your stomach, and you're just like, oh, let me take a shot to calm my nerves before I go in the pharmacy. And like, I totally could understand how people could develop substance
Yeah.
abuse problems.
Well, I think that I'm surprised it's not even more pervasive in our profession than it is, because you have stressful work environment, you have access to controlled substances. Those are two things already. Like access and stressful work environment are two huge things. That, and then the third thing is that a lot of pharmacists and technicians feel like they know something about drugs so that they can control it. And that's a really lethal combination, thinking that you can control this because you understand the way drugs work. And I always try to tell people that that's a terrible idea to have, because you don't wake up one morning and be a full-blown heroin addict. It happens by accident. Same way, you don't wake up one morning and need that shot before you go to work. It starts out very innocent. It starts out in pharmacy school. I mean, pharmacy school is super stressful. You're either really studying, really focused on trying to learn stuff, that big test comes or whatever, and everybody's ready to party. I mean, it was almost acceptable. It's almost like a rite of passage. Even people that don't really drink ended up drinking before the end of pharmacy school. I could remember when I was there, and I had a lot of really smart kids, young kids, being there and like being super focused. But by the time they were done with those 6 years or 8 years, they were, pretty seasoned drinkers. Even some of the people who never drank before that. I remember having a few Asian friends that I had there, and they were like, "No, I don't drink. It doesn't sit well with me." And before the end of that, it was like more. I'd be partying with more flushed Asians than I would be if I was at the poker table in Vegas somewhere. So so that just sort of sees it does come in. It's almost acceptable. It's like, oh, and I feel really bad sometimes. Like that joke, I'm like, oh, that's kind of in bad taste. And I feel bad about some of the times where I joke about alcohol, which I do a lot, or joke about drug use a little bit in my tweets or in the pharmacy. It's always lighthearted, but it's still it's a serious issue. And I wanted to tell you about my own personal experience in the past. That's the reason why I know you probably didn't think, oh, Shane's not an expert. Why would he want to talk to me? Why would we want to do this thing about a little bit about substance abuse? Well, my family background, I have a history of alcoholism and some drug use on both sides of my family, my biological side, on the father's side, and my mother's side. And it's always been a part of me. I could tell, like, I'm like Brett Kavanaugh, remember he was doing, I like beer. So I do like beer. I do like wine. I don't drink hardly at all anymore. Here and there I will, but not nearly as much as I did when I was younger. Coming from a small town, northeastern Pennsylvania is known for a lot of things. They're known for hard work, known for really shitty, like bad for you food, lots of pizza and wings, and lots of beer drinking, and lots of, rampant alcoholism is something you grow up with when you're there. Everybody has parties and drinks. All the adults drink beer, so you sort of emulate that as you get older. I partied in pharmacy school like most people, and in the very beginning, before I had this brood of children, when I first got into being a pharmacist and out here with Walgreens, I still went out on the weekends. I was still, young enough to want to go out on the weekends. Me and Marilyn weren't married yet. We've been married for 9 years a couple days ago. But in the very beginning of our relationship, we still like to go out and do those kind of things. So I drank more than I should, and I definitely drove, on times when I probably shouldn't have, which was, the most ridiculous thing. But we grew up in an environment, a small town, where that was pretty acceptable. You'd go to a party, you'd drive there, and you'd drink, and then you'd drive home. Whoever was, I guess, the least drunk would be the one who was the designated best chance. You know what I mean? The designated probably going to make it to your destination. And they didn't have DUI checkpoints or things like that. So I grew up so really callous to that. What I'm getting to, I'm sorry if I'm taking a little too long here, is in the very beginning of my career, my pharmacist friend who lives, a neighbor of mine, he's also a pharmacist, he was having a problem, and he ended up getting fired from Rite Aid due to substance abuse, not alcoholism, but they gave him a job almost 100 miles as the manager, almost 100 miles away from our home. And he was driving out there Monday through Thursday to be the manager of this location. So like a really super stressful work environment and everything. And he had a girlfriend who was also a pharmacist. They had a falling out. Now he has this house all by himself here, young guy, trying to, what does the doctor do but prescribe him some Adderall, right? So he starts taking the Adderall, and of course he needs more and more as his tolerance builds up. He probably had a little bit of, a predisposition for drug abuse, and ended up starting he must have been out of his mind because he wasn't even trying. He was just writing fake prescriptions for himself, scanning it, or not writing fake prescriptions, rescanning the same prescription over and over again and filling it. Eventually, Rite Aid catches on, fires him, but they realized they had a lot of maybe some liability since they gave this guy a job 100 miles away from his place of residence. So they just fired him. But the board caught up with him and did all this kind of, stuff. So he was having a really bad time. He made it through. He's a hospital pharmacist, residency trained now, got all the way through the pharmacist recovery program. He's a success story. But when he was in his worst part, we got together and we were, I would take him out places. We'd go have a couple drinks before he was in recovery. And we decided to go to a place maybe about 4 miles in Palm Desert here. And of course I was driving because he was, this was when he was really into drinking and partying and everything. So went to this, it was an Alzheimer's benefit or autism benefit at a local bar, and had a couple drinks, myself had a couple drinks. And then we finished the night and I said, okay, I'll drive home. I've had drinks, but I've obviously, in my life, I've been way, drunker than that driving home. So I drive home and I'm coming home my normal way and I see lights in front of me. And I'm like, oh shit, what's going on here? And he's like, Rick is like, Maurice, you got to cut that out. Anyway, the guy, my friend is, he's it looks like a checkpoint to me. And he's like hammered. Of course, the whole car smells like alcohol because he's really, really drunk. And I was, I had a couple drinks, but I definitely wasn't super drunk. So we pull up to the checkpoint, tell the officer, yeah, obviously I've been drinking, he's been drinking, but I'm not drunk. So I get out, do the thing. And he's like, you seem okay, but can you, take the BAC test? And I blow right at the legal limit. So
wow.
This was about 8 or 9 years ago now. So he's like, oh, I don't know. He's like, so what they did is they cited me right there. He said, call your wife. So I had to call Marilyn and say, hey, guess what? And she came to pick us up. They towed the car. I had to come home, had to get a lawyer, do all that stuff, spend all that money. And I got a reckless driving charge out of it. But I also had to report it to them. I had to do a whole bunch of stuff to prevent. I thought my whole world was exploding at that time over something, a one night out. But it really changed my perspective on everything. That the stuff I had to go through, I had to pay a fine. I had to report that to the board. But in California, if it's not like a severe DUI or where you had like an accident or anything like that, basically you just report it. And then if nothing ever happens again, you're fine. So that happened to me. And I wanted to let everybody know why it's really important to me, because this was before the onset of like Uber and all those things where you're going out. So I know that people think that they can do everything and they're invincible, especially when they're young. But it's something little like that. And that could have had a really bad ending. That story could have had a really, really bad ending. And that's what I want to get across to people is that, I'm thankful for that experience because it changed my views on alcoholism, on drinking and driving. And I just want to share that with everybody.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people, they think about how their actions at in the workplace can affect their license, but I don't think they understand their actions outside of pharmacy, how it can affect your license, and how that situation right there could have affected your pharmacy license. So I think that's just good to let people hear. I know like beginning when I worked in the pharmacy, like it's like every Friday people would go out for drinks, but just to catch up. How was your work? How was your week? What happened? But it's now it's like people go to get drinks every day after work because the pharmacy is just so stressful. And
Yeah.
what percentage of people do you think probably has a unknown substance abuse problem because of retail pharmacy? If you had to like guess.
I think it's probably about in line with the general population, something like 10 to 15%. I did read something. I don't know if this statistic is the best, but I read something like 46% of healthcare workers say that they have taken a prescription medication without a prescription for it, or abused at some time, controlled substance, or medication or alcohol.
Oh wow. Um, I'm sure like Walgreens probably has a substance abuse line or something, but I bet you a lot of pharmacists or pharmacy technicians don't even know that there's resources for that. I wish I would have had more information.
Yeah.
If I could find something, I'll put it in the description below. Unless you know.
the the pharmacist recovery network, I think that's one of the major things, and every board of pharmacy has its own program. Out here it's Maximus, because I know, because my neighbor was involved in that. Usually if you get like a severe DUI, like where you're double the legal limit, or you have an accident or something like that, you have to enroll in the pharmacy recovery network and the program for the state in order to try and keep your license. So that's it's probably a little bit different in each state, but I know there's the pharmacy recovery network is the big pharmacist recovery network is the big one.
Well, I just want to say thank you for coming on and talk about not only the national pharmacy and pharmacy technician union, but coming on here to share your story about substance abuse. If you have your story that you want to tell about substance abuse and how the working conditions in retail has maybe led you to have substance abuse, please feel free to comment on the channel. A lot of times, I will just say personally, when people comment on my videos, I've had different news outlets reach out to me because they can tell how big of a problem certain things are within pharmacy by the comment. So, I know a lot of people are scared to post things, but from a lot of the people who post, they have like fake names or fake pictures anyway. So it really helps when you tell your story, so that it doesn't look like I'm just telling like, gee, these just random incidents here and there. It's really affecting a lot of people. So please do that.
Yeah. I think a lot of pharmacists are like, if they've had any kind of substance abuse, whether it's known or not, they're ashamed. Technicians too, that get back to people at work. And that was a big thing for me. In the beginning, I felt like, a failure and a fraud and all this. And now that I look back and I've gone through all that, I realized the best thing that ever happened to me. It changed my views on what's important, and what risks you're willing to take. And as now I'm a different kind of guy. You have a family, you see the bigger picture. But if any little story, anything could change, preventing people from having to go through that, it's worth it. So telling your story is important. And I would say anybody out there who's struggling with any kind of addiction, be it alcohol or other substances, get help. There are ways. You don't have to get caught before you get help. It's actually worse. If you get caught, you usually have some other problems. If you get help prior, there's still a way to, really, really be able to make a positive thing out of a terrible situation.
Excellent. That was an excellent last comment. And don't forget, I'm going to put a link not only to the Accidental Pharmacist page, but also to the GoFundMe link as well. So if you want to donate, and I'll actually put a link to the, what'd you say it was, the pharmacy, what was it called, the network?
The Pharmacist Recovery Network. I mean, I could find some information on that. And then the Board of Pharmacy, your state's Board of Pharmacy website is a great, just search down, Pharmacist Recovery Network or something along those lines, substance abuse for healthcare professionals. And there's usually some, information on that page.
Yes. And also me and the Accidental Pharmacist, we're going to be working on doing future Zoom calls where it's me, him, and a third person, maybe a fourth, where, we have images here, but the images will be blank. And where you see our names, you can put whatever name that you want. So it'll be, no one will know who you are. It won't be your picture. And that way you guys can tell your stories. Because I'm telling you, when I post these things and people see the comments, I can't tell you how many different news outlets or different people who have reached out to me asking me, are these true? And I'm like, I don't make up these comments. This is what people are posting, So, please comment. It really does help. And please share and please subscribe to both of our pages. All right, everybody.
All right.
Shane, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can make a
difference.
Take
it easy, Maurice. All right. Pharmacy on. Take it easy, you guys.
Bye-bye.